It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
When you think of NBA duos, you might think of Kawhi and PG or LeBron and AD, but the Locked On Podcast Network has Hollinger and ND. It's the Hollinger and Duncan NBA show. Follow now on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your preferred podcast provider.
Welcome, everybody, to the Locked On Lakers podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin. I'm joined by Pete Zayas. Pete, KCP played well in a game that mattered and hit big shots.
He hit the two biggest shots of the whole game. He hit that. They had finally tied it at 90, came off of that curl for that pull-up jumper to make it 92-90. Then that three in transition after Dwight Howard once again made an amazing defensive play. He saved LeBron on that. LeBron was actually looking over at KCP, like yelling instructions, and DeRozan was like, all right, you're not looking. I'm just going to drive.
Right.
And LeBron was like, oh, crap. LeBron's been really good defensively, but he messed up there. And Dwight rotates over, strips it, big bucket for KCP. It was quite a night, man. This team's pretty damn good. It's awesome to watch.
I'm having fun watching Laker games. I find myself looking forward to Laker games. We haven't been able to say that in like 5 years, 6 years.
It's really nourishing, man. It's just like, it's so, I don't know how the season ends, but this season being fun, really, it means a lot to me, like just as a fan and as covering the team and spending as much time as both of us do on it. Like it's really nourishing. It's cool to see.
Yeah. One of the themes after in yesterday's show, and then when I did the show with Jazz for Silver Screen, one of the themes that kept popping up was because we're focused a lot on Dwight Howard, and him feeling better or finding his love for the game all over again. And one of the things that I really kind of noticed was that this actually kind of applies to the to the Laker fans as well, the fan base itself as well, where Dwight has said and Kobe has analyzed with Dwight that Dwight felt like he lost something that, obviously he really cared deeply about. And now you can kind of see it with how he carries himself out there on the court. And I feel like with this fan base, it didn't quite understand how blessed it was leading up to the last 7 years or so. And then you go through that and you're like, God, are we ever going to be that kind of blessed again? And now for these last 5 games at least, and it appears moving forward, hopefully, health and luck notwithstanding, so far it seems like, those things are kind of back. That Lakers exceptionalism and the pride that comes with rooting for a good Lakers team, that stuff is back. And I think it's really made this season all the more special.
It's such a great story, man, with Dwight, because in a lot of ways, Dwight represents the beginning of the decline to Laker fans, right? They traded for him. They traded Bynum for him, whose career went down the toilet due to injury right after that. But this is going to be fun, Lakers. We were all hyped up about them, right? Yeah. And then, Dwight's back was never right. He did not was not in the right place mentally. He clashed with Kobe and with Nash and, wasn't setting screens. And we were not exactly his biggest fans, right? And the Lakers tried to re-sign him but couldn't. And that was the first time the Lakers had a star player slip through their grasp. Yeah, exactly. And both Dwight and the Lakers went on this 6 or 7 year journey through the wilderness, and now Dwight is back on the Lakers and finding redemption alongside the Lakers, and he's a big reason why the Lakers are finding it. It's like if you wrote a script, and submitted it, you'd be like, it's kind of sappy, it's a little on the nose, might need to make some alterations, but it's what's really happening, and it's just super cool.
Yeah. I noticed last night that Dwight's hair kind of reminds me a little bit of Tina Turner, and now I can't unsee it.
Hey, Dwight keeps playing like this. He can show up looking however he wants.
All right, today's show, because of the way yesterday's show went, Harrison and I just got on here and talked about the game and the experience of rooting for a fun Lakers team as they beat the Spurs. We fell way behind on questions, so we have plenty of stuff to catch up on. Let's start here with this first one. It's a long one, and it has to do with Dwight, so it's a natural segue. Basically, Next Lakers Dynasty is writing whether or not, if the Lakers were to start Dwight, you would see some of this kind of energy dissipate from his game. Like, do you think it would embolden him to fall back into bad habits?
I don't. I can understand why Vogel doesn't want to make a change to a lineup that's won 5 straight games, because even if the starting lineup is not performing great, they were better in last night's game, but even if they're not, like, it kind of screws with your rotation overall. And there's no guarantee that if you start Dwight and put JaVale off the bench that you don't lose a ton of the effectiveness that the bench has had. I like the adjustment that Vogel's made in that essentially JaVale is just playing the start of the first quarter and the start of the third quarter. That's it, like old Andrew Bogut on the Warriors. And that's the proper adjustment to have made. So I don't think that making that change would make a difference, because the ways in which Dwight is good, it fits really well alongside Anthony Davis and LeBron, in that you just have this really dominant defensive front line, and it allows guys like Avery Bradley, Danny Green, who are no slouches defensively themselves, to be aggressive. It just like that 5-man group really works well together. They've got some bonkers net rating in like 14 minutes. I think they're a plus 74 or something absurd like that.
Totally sustainable.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't think you'd lose anything with putting Dwight in the starting lineup. I just don't expect that change to be made.
I think it's more likely that he kind of falls back into bad habits at the end of this season. Right? But I think right now, and I don't even think that that's even necessarily likely. Like, he has seen, I am this kind of valuable. My teammates love me this much more because of the way that I'm approaching not just basketball, but to everything around the game. I should recognize that this is maybe how I should have been all along, and probably don't have, this is not a forever type of career, right? So why not spend the last X amount of years of his career approaching the game this way and being this kind of beloved? Because, like, that's why Laker fans like him. I wrote this before the season because he kept on doing that whole thing where he was like, I'm just really sorry about the way things ended last time. I felt like I had something to make up for with this fan base, blah, 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 blah. And while I understand and respect that attitude, at the end of the day, the only way Laker fans were going to welcome him back the way that they have was if he helped the Lakers win. And I think here in this case, he has helped the Lakers win in this way. So why now go away from some of those habits right now? Just by being promoted.
Well, and he's getting love for it too.
Yes.
Like, he's getting a ton of positive reinforcement for being exactly the guy that he is, which is like he's scoring 6-7 points per game, but his impact is felt all over the game. And Laker fans recognize that. We've seen enough good basketball to know how much this means. Do you see Snoop on the broadcast? Yeah. Like, Snoop was going nuts, and it was for Dwight. It was every time Dwight would make a play, Snoop would get on his feet. Like, man, you don't get that anywhere other than the Lakers. Freaking Snoop Dogg on the sideline. Like cheering your hustle plays. Come on, man.
Yeah. It's been really cool to watch this. The only concern I would have, and it's not, I share your lack of concern in answering this question, but I don't think Dwight is this player if you extend his minutes too much further, because he's playing with an immense amount of energy.
And if we can get this guy at 20 minutes per game for 82 games, that's the challenge, right?
Yeah.
6 games is great. 82 games is way better. And then add the playoffs on top of that. That's what we want. So that's a really good point.
Yeah. The second half of that question was about KCP and the way that he played in that San Antonio game, and basically asking the question, why is he such a different player in garbage time? I think this was before the San Antonio game happened. So the question was basically like, why is KCP such a different player there? And it's just, It's just a different game. It's like you go play pickup games at the Y, and it's not going to be the same kind of intensity if you add like referees and an actual scoreboard and all of those things into an organized basketball game. It's just a different game, and he seems to thrive more off of a more lackadaisical game. But last night was great.
Yeah, I mean, that's true of a lot of guys. There's also pressure elements and, knowing that everybody's getting on your case. It's the flip side of what Dwight is enjoying, right? Is when you're playing like crap, it is noticed, and it is noticed at very loud decibel levels when you play for the Lakers. You can't just go through a 5-game slump in peace the way that pretty much every role player in the league does and have it not be noticed. So now KCP's struggles in that respect extend way beyond 5 games. And there are elements, I think, that have to do with his personality and just how comfortable he is that go into that. But it requires a little bit of, psychoanalysis.
Yeah.
I don't know the dude well enough to do that.
Yeah, I think it's good to stay away from that. We don't know him well enough. I also don't think it was necessarily a coincidence that he played really well on the road away from the fan base. Because I think those NBA players, they're human beings at the end of the day, and you can kind of hear it. You can hear that kind of hesitation when you're going up to shoot, and everybody's like, ooh, and you feel everybody else's rear ends pucker up. So of course yours is going to as well. And I think getting out there in San Antonio and just being able to focus on, all right, I just got to make this shot. There's fewer Laker fans here that are going to respond poorly if I miss this. I'm just going to let it fly. And then I think also he said after the game that he found his love again for basketball, which I found interesting. It felt pretty early in the season for that kind of a quote. But yeah, I just think it's just one of those things. It's one of those things that's hard to explain.
He may be a guy who plays better on the road, which is unlike a lot of role players, but that whole pressure at home, that could be something like I thought, he didn't make much in the way of shots, but I thought he defended really well in the Dallas game and was an important player in that game. So yeah, he just may be comfortable getting away from Staples, and this little road trip may get him back on track.
Yep. All right, let's take a quick second here. When we come back, we're going to talk about a few other pickups that we are now in the season. The Lakers have a 5-game winning streak, so obviously that means Laker fans are interested in future pickups in addition to the roster. So we'll come back and talk about that.
Hi, I'm Alex Wolf.
And I'm Gavin Shaw, and we're the hosts of Locked On Knicks. As two freakishly tall and slightly oddly proportioned podcasters, we need a clothing store willing to go to the next level on customization.
That's why we use Indochino for our custom clothing needs. Even when things don't go 100% right on the first try, Indochino is committed to making sure you're taken care of. My custom shirt came in perfect. I wore it to a wedding almost immediately. But my chinos were a little tight. I took them to my local Indochino, and my tailor Alex was very accommodating, retaking my measurements and making sure my pants were a perfect fit.
I was told my custom shirt would arrive in 2 to 3 weeks, and it ended up getting to me even sooner. I constantly have a problem with my sleeves being too short, but thanks to the meticulous efforts of my Indochino tailor Kwame, my shirt fits perfectly across the board and has quickly become a staple in my rotation.
Start your style upgrade now with $30 off your total purchase of $399 or more at Indochino.com when entering code LOCKEDON at checkout. Plus, shipping is free.
That's Indochino.com, promo code LOCKEDON for $30 off of your total purchase of $399 or more. An incredible deal for made-to-measure clothing.
You really have no excuse anymore to wear clothing that doesn't fit.
The Locked On Podcast Network is known for its industry-leading daily local podcasts. We're Locked On your favorite team, but we also have a daily national NBA podcast. The quick-hitting Locked On NBA covers the previous night's games, what's upcoming, and the biggest stories in the league in 30 minutes. Locked On NBA, your daily national bite-sized podcast. Get Locked On NBA on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your preferred podcast provider.
It's on one hand, I understand it. I understand this need to continue to improve, and that is the American ideal, right? Expansion at understanding or ignoring the potential cost. And right now, the cost is hey, we should just stop and smell the roses. The Lakers have their first 5-game winning streak in 6 years or something insane like that. Let's just enjoy this. But no, Laker fans are interested. So the first question here, we have a couple of these in a row. This comes from Equine TLC. Do you think Jamal Crawford would be a good pickup for the Lakers? If so, why do you think he hasn't been picked up yet?
No, I don't think Crawford would be a good pickup. Yeah. He's a guy who can score off of the dribble, but the things that we really like about this team, especially the defensive end of the court, he doesn't provide enough in the way of like catch and shoot ability. He's a scorer off of the dribble, and that's why he's been in the league for a very long time. Mm-hmm. Nothing against Jamal Crawford. He's just 39 years old, and he does not do what this team needs well enough to warrant a roster spot. So I would pass on him, although he had a great career.
Yeah, I mean, to answer the second half of the question, because I agree with your answer for the first, he hasn't been picked up yet because the end comes for everybody.
Right.
You know, right. Like, it's just his time happened. He made a great career out of his time, and now it's just time to move on to the next phase of his life.
And your game goes away way before your name does. That's the only reason we're talking about Crawford in the first place. But it's also why none of the NBA teams have picked him up.
Mm-hmm. All right. UUJR6 writes, hey, guys, I know the dream buyout is Iggy right now, but let's say he gets traded somewhere else. How would you guys feel if the Lakers targeted guys like How would you guys feel if the Lakers targeted guys like Crowder, Covington, or maybe even Ariza? Thanks for answering. Love the show. Thanks.
I mean, no way Covington's getting bought out.
No, he's getting traded if he's getting moved.
Ariza's a possibility that I think is like that's reasonable and that's fair. I don't watch a ton of Kings, and I didn't watch a ton of the Wizards last year, but he's somebody who every time I've watched him the last few times, I've been like, he might be kind of crispy, like along the similar lines of Crawford, not quite as old, but you know, what I have the fondest memories of Trevor Ariza with that 2009 title team and the year before as well, but he may not be the guy that we remember him being.
Yeah, I don't watch much like you in Kings basketball, but one thing I do always have is like TweetDeck is always open. So even while the Lakers are playing, I'll, kind of check in and I follow a few Kings fans, and it hasn't been too positive from Kings fans in analyzing his game. And I feel like we got a lot of that last year from Wizards fans as well.
They've been so fucking miserable this year so far. Kings fans. It was funny. They're like the baby snake that didn't know how to disperse its venom properly last year because they were like halfway decent, high win, 30 win total, right? And they're just, them chests were very much puffed out. Yeah. And then it's like you just reminded they're the fucking Kings. So
yeah, expectations suck. Jay Crowder, we kind of
Luke Walton might too, but
I hope Geeter isn't listening. Jay Crowder also was a name that came up there. I think it's also more likely. So the reason these guys get bought out is because the team that they play for is ready to move on from them and isn't going to be able to get anything for that player in a trade. So usually you're not looking at incredible players who are available, in that kind of a situation. So
Jay Crowder would be a very good one, though, man. He's the one on the list.
He would be an incredible addition. I think it's also more likely he gets traded, though. It's just like with Iggy. I think same thing. Eventually, there are teams out there, the Denver Nuggets, the Clippers. You can go up and down the conference and all throughout the league. There are teams out there that might trade for Iggy just to make it so that the Lakers don't get him. Like you gotta, like the Nuggets to me seem like an example of a team that probably should trade for Andre Iguodala. They have way too many guys right now, and you trade for him, it means the Lakers don't get him. They have the assets to be able to get him without feeling too much pain for the move. I think it's probably just as likely that he gets traded to Denver as it is he gets bought out and joins the Lakers.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. I'm curious, though, like, why hasn't an Iggy trade happened yet? Maybe a team like Denver that's not started all that great, maybe that changes their thought process on it. But I think that ultimately Iggy gets bought out because I think a trade would have happened by now. Although the December 15th deadline when all the guys who were signed this past offseason can be legally traded, maybe that changes something.
Yeah, I think the reason he hasn't been traded so far is because a lot of the cap fodder that you need to trade for a guy who makes $17 million, like those guys literally can't be traded quite yet. So let's go. Another question here comes from papertiger.jpg. Hey, Anthony and Pete, love the show. Keep it up. Just wanted your opinion on this. If the Markelle Fultz experiment in Orlando works out and he moves up to the starting one position, I was thinking maybe the Lakers could trade for DJ Augustine since he would be the starting point guard the team really needs, who can also space the floor really well. I'm on with it.
Great idea. Great idea. I'd have to look up what Augustine's making. I think it's in the 8 to 10 million range. So there may be difficulties in making that work, but like a KCP for Augustine trade, maybe you got to give up a pick as well because, got to give Orlando a reason to do that, but maybe a second rounder does that. I don't know Augustine's contract situation, but yeah, like that's the exact type of small move that the Lakers should be looking at. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, my only thing though is that like I'm not sure Orlando would want to do that because they're also vying for the playoffs. So they could win. They're probably the favorites or close to the favorites to win that Southeast division.
Like Jesus, how bad is that division?
It's bad.
I always have it sorted by conference when I look up the standings. So.
Yeah, it's bad. Look at it. It's like it's Atlanta, Orlando, Miami, and Charlotte.
Woof, and the Wizards. Man, how do we get a division like that?
That sure as hell would be nice. I like the idea. I just don't know if he's going to be available because Orlando probably thinks they're a playoff team, and why sell if you're a playoff team? Quinn Jr. writes, hey, Anthony, love the show, and I try to listen daily. I was wondering what you and Pete would think about the Lakers. Well, we already learned about Jamal Crawford. But they say pineapple on pizza is an abomination, so, Pete, that's your people. So...
Oh, there's an intersect of the pineapple on pizza is bad and the Jamal Crawford folks?
Uh-huh. That's your people.
I may have to do some reconsidering.
Let's take a quick second. When we come back, we'll keep on answering your questions.
Along with our local experts covering your favorite team, the Locked On Podcast Network has the #1 fantasy basketball podcast. Locked On Fantasy Basketball with Josh Lloyd gives you the edge in your fantasy league.
Panicking over someone who comes out and shoots 1 of 9 for 3 points in 27 minutes, that's where people make mistakes. So on a streaming basis, he might not be useful, but in a weekly lock league, because he's got that volume of games, Marcus Morris, you could probably lock into your weekly lineup.
Follow Locked On Fantasy Basketball on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your preferred podcast provider. When you're finished with today's episode, the Locked On Podcast Network has an amazing national show lineup for you. Every Monday, the new Hollinger and Duncan NBA show brings you insight from former NBA executive and analytics guru John Hollinger. Rejecting the Screen brings you 2 episodes a week with fun NBA talk and a long-form interview every Thursday. Your daily 30-minute NBA show is Locked On NBA, updating you on the previous night's action and looking ahead to what's next. The Locked On Podcast Network All-Star National Lineup, Hollinger and Duncan NBA Show, Rejecting the Screen, and Locked On NBA.
All right, we have a request here from Jay Bridges 1. Basically, they say that we need to have Matt Moore back on ASAP because he actually has to say nice things about the Lakers. That's kind of fun.
I'll probably be skipping that episode.
What's funny is he was higher on the Lakers heading into the year than like most people. Next question, though, comes from Hooli_O. Is it just me, or has this team had more dunks this year than the last 6 years combined? I mean, you have a front court of Dwight, Davis, and LeBron, and then even JaVale is a dunker. So, yeah, but I think generally speaking, this is one of the more athletic teams that the Lakers have really ever had.
Mm-hmm. Bro, that front court's nuts. Like, we realize what a game changer this version of Dwight is, right?
Yeah.
Because like even when we were at our like, oh, freaking Dwight Howard, he's the worst over this offseason, it was never about his talent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the one thing that could take that away is his back surgery and age, and he's started to look like he's warming up in terms of explosiveness.
Yes.
Like he looks better now than he did 3 or 4 weeks.
Dunk?
Bro. And so like that guy with Anthony Davis and a locked in LeBron James, there's never been a front court in the NBA history that's been that athletic and like that physically dominant. Dwight was physically dominant in his prime, like top 3 in the NBA physically dominant. Anthony Davis fits the same description. LeBron James fits the same description. Put all 3 of them on the same team, man, that's a problem.
There was the Lakers actually got a really cool angle of a pick and roll between, well, I think it was more of a handoff, but either way, between Dwight and Avery Bradley. And Dwight went up, caught the lob, and caught a body because Jakob Poeltl was standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. And while it wasn't obviously the thunderous, like, armpits at the rim type of dunk that we kind of know Dwight for, he was still elbows above it. You know, he was still way up
powerful too.
Yeah.
It's not just like kind of daintily throwing it down. It's power on that too.
Yeah, and then, you know, the next play was the putback dunk that, you know, it wasn't the one I was alluding to earlier. The play, my favorite play of the game with Dwight was actually when he caught a rebound, landed, didn't hesitate, and went right back up and dunked it.
Mm-hmm. Those double jumps are tough.
Yeah, that's not something that I thought we were getting from this Dwight, to be completely honest, heading into this year. And yeah, I mean, I again, just like I said the other day when you and I were talking about it, just like I've said on Twitter, ever since it started happening, I'm happy that I was like so hilariously wrong about Dwight Howard. It's been great. It's been really cool.
Yeah.
Girthquake writes, "Sup, Pete? You're awesome, and you give excellent insight on how and why the Lakers should run certain plays. Anthony, you can be annoying sometimes, but you're a great host. Thank you." What 4 current NBA players have the worst tattoos? Pretty much a Mount Rushmore for bad tats.
Oh, Jesus. I am not the person to ask this.
Well, all right.
I have a weird blind spot for things like that. For like, I have no idea what shoes any Laker player wears. Mm-hmm. I watch these guys constantly. If you ask me, like, oh, is this guy in Nikes or Adidas or, you know, Kobe's, KD's, whatever, I have no clue what any of them wear. So just like that sort of stuff, like it's just a blind spot for me.
So I'm trying to think of tattoos like over the course of my lifetime because, yeah, I haven't kept up with the tattoo game for these damn millennials, but. Like, the worst tattoo, or the one that always threw me off the most, was, remember Kenyon Martin had, like, lips on his neck?
Yes.
That one always kind of bothered me a little bit. Jordan Farmar had, like a crown tattoo, if I remember correctly. No, I take that back. I think he had one for his family. But, yeah, tattoos isn't something that I really keep an eye on, but there's just some that just stand out because of how weird they have. Oh, remember, there was a guy who had Abraham Lincoln on his neck.
Was that Chris Anderson?
No, that was, he was a Washington Bullet back in the day. In like that Gilbert, they might have been the Wizards already, but that Gilbert Arenas, Caron Butler team that kind of gave those first time around LeBron James Cleveland Cavaliers, like they had a fun little rivalry for a little bit. God, coming out of high school, he was compared to Michael Jordan.
Larry Hughes or Felipe Lopez?
Deshaun Stevenson, yes.
Yeah. The good old NBA draft.net Deshaun Stevenson comparison. I tweeted at them a couple of years. And look, they've been around for ages. I'm not trying to like get into it with, other content creators. I made a little crack about that comparison. And bro, I got like 3 tweets back at me like right away. And this is when, no one knew or cared about who I was. But that one stuck with them for a very long time. Lord knows we all have our screw ups when it comes to the draft. But yes, I always think of NBA draft.net when I think of Deshaun Stevenson.
But he got a tattoo of like Abraham Lincoln on his neck. And that was just in general, stay away from neck tattoos. I just think, like, actually, I forget which radio host said it, but if you're getting into a fight with a person in it with a neck tattoo, you're probably losing.
Do you have any tattoos?
I do not. I've been thinking about, there's like a tribal orca one that I've been thinking about putting on my right shoulder, but I haven't followed through with it. I haven't gotten drunk enough, I don't think.
Yeah.
You?
I do. I have one tattoo of my old band's logo, and it was my drummer's girlfriend had just become a tattoo artist, and it was the second tattoo that she had ever given. Mm-hmm. And like the letters were like M and I. It was supposed to be M and I on the logo, but she made the M really like wide, and there's a little like dot, like to dot the I. So you've seen it before on my calf.
Yeah.
But it basically looks like a butt pooping a little pellet upside down, and I carry that with me for the rest of my life.
My cousin, when he was, rest in peace, by the way, to Oscar, but he was in jail, and while he was in jail, like the hobby that he picked up was doing tattoos. So he gets out and he has this friend over, and this friend's girlfriend wanted his friend's name across her chest. But he spelt his friend's name wrong across her chest.
Oh,
in a tattoo.
No.
Yeah. So that was kind of like, that was my introduction to the idea of tattoos, and I've just always like stayed away just in case. All right, let's go a couple more questions here. N Moody30 writes, what do you think of the strategy of putting Anthony Davis on the other side of the court during free throws instead of down on the box contesting 4 rebounds? Have you noticed that?
I do like that. I think that's something that most coaches are preferring to do more often, is get your rim protector down the court, and you get so few offensive rebounds on those. Although AD's got that length, he had a great tap back last night that earned the Lakers an extra possession. But by and large, I think you get more value of sending your big back, unless it's a late game situation.
Yeah, I also think it kind of limits the wear and tear. It's one extra trip down the court that he has to run hard for. Mm-hmm. And, when you're at the free throw, when you're in the box like that, usually you're just kind of backing away anyway. And if you are contesting for one, we talked about his poor effort selection, it's one fewer opportunity that he can run in there and try to jump way higher than he actually probably has to in that situation. So just protect him there and let him get back down the court. The Lakers have enough length that they can create those possessions without it having to be Anthony Davis. It's kind of nice. All right, this is fun. Talking about basketball, about a fun team, about a good team, about a likable team. Like, that's the other thing with this group, is that they're extremely likable.
They're playing hard, man.
Yeah.
Just play hard every night and we'll back you.
Yeah, it's a fun team to really follow. We still have a few more questions to get to, so over the course of the week we will do that as well. The next time you and I talk, Pete, will be after the Lakers play the Chicago Bulls. That'll be for tomorrow's game. So yeah, that's a fun little matchup as well. I think the Lakers probably should be favored pretty heavily in that one. The Bulls haven't been good this year. So we'll be able to analyze that as well. But for now, have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Are you a fan of a team that's already a lock for the playoffs and the season's barely even started? That's way too easy. Why not try catching up with a team that could be good or could be a disaster? Now that's my idea of fun. My name's Sarah, and I'm the host of Locked On Los Angeles Kings, a new daily podcast covering the most perplexing hockey team in all of Southern California. Want to know what under-the-radar players to keep an eye on? Are you wondering if Jonathan Quick is going to physically crumble into dust? Do you want to hear both analysis of the latest Kings game and enjoy a 10-minute meditation on Alec Martinez? I've got all of that and more for you 5 days a week on Locked On Los Angeles Kings. Find us on Twitter at Locked On LA Kings and subscribe to the show on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you find your favorite shows. Locked On Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.